Welcome to Heal Me with Chocolate, the podcast where we talk about food, health, and how different foods affect health. If this is something you're curious about, come join our growing village and come along for a ride. Let's go. Hello, my name is Dr. Beata Lerman. I am a gene therapy and immune oncology PhD, and I want to tell you my deeply personal story about how I became passionate about food as medicine. In 2018, I got very strange, mysterious disease, which was not going away for months, actually. And so when it was finally addressed, I was very quickly diagnosed with cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. Not a very rare form of cancer, more rare than like Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's, but it was very strange looking. Cutaneous T-cell lymphoma creates tumors all over the body, everywhere hair follicles go, and not only. And so that was when my daughter was only a year and 3 months old, late 2018. And that was a wake-up call for me and for my family that something needed to be done. As I was going through cancer treatment and getting an immunotherapy as an experimental therapy for my cancer, I also, being an immunologist and a cancer researcher at the time, started to question what can I do to make the therapy I was receiving more effective. And so I started reading massive amounts of scientific studies, all of which amounted to one thing: sugar feeds cancer. It's an uncomfortable truth. It's probably a truth that most people will not say out loud. Definitely doctors didn't mention anything to me, but the more evidence I looked into, the clearer it became. And so as a part of my journey, I made a very conscious decision to start cutting out sugars and ultra-processed foods containing sugars from my diet and my life. And it was a journey. I'm going to tell you it was not easy. I'm not going to say, oh, I just quit cold turkey and in next week I was feeling great. No, there is a method to quitting sugar, and the method is always very painful. It's going through withdrawal in the worst way possible. I haven't gone through withdrawals in any other way, but I have seen friends and families fighting addiction going through similar experience. So it took me about 3.5 weeks to completely detoxify sugar out of my system. It was a lot more difficult than I expected. Why? Well, because sugar is in every product, nearly every product, probably at least 85% products that we buy from the store. And if we want any kind of convenience in life and not cook every meal, which I have been doing since, it's very difficult to avoid it. So I started to go back to drawing board and reinventing foods in my kitchen that I enjoyed buying from the store, but making it without sugar and other ingredients that would cause inflammation and promote disease and ultimately feed my cancer. Back then, I was still working in the pharma and biotech space, inventing protocols and assays and getting different scientific and medical entities to bridge their protocol gaps in their workflow, addressing the diseases of their interest. And I just found it so interesting that In my cancer journey, never once was I told by any doctors that you should eat a certain way, or you should live a certain way, you should sleep certain amount, and that would make therapy more effective. So this is something I had to figure out myself, and this is something that I'm more than happily share with everybody who asks, and now with you as my audience. If anybody knows anything about me, they would know that I absolutely love chocolate. Do you love chocolate as much as I do? So back in my graduate school days, there has never been an exam that I've taken without a steady diet of just chocolate. And it was basically store-bought, sugar-packed, probably not very healthy chocolate. In graduate school, you don't have a lot of money. So it's a luxury you basically can't afford for the higher price brands. And giving up sugar out of my diet as a part of my recovery left me with very few options. Well, at the point where I was comfortably living with no sweets at all, I eventually thought, well, there is surely somebody who invented sugar-free chocolate. Like we've heard about Lily's and other brands who supposedly lowering sugar in their products. Well, I've tried them all. I've tried a $5 a piece little truffles from Amazon. I've tried a lot more expensive chocolate bars. And I found one of two problems. The sugar-free chocolate was either just really bad tasting because the sugar alternatives being used was something chemical and it had all kinds of undesirable things like lingering aftertaste or sensations that were just not ideal, not associated with a good experience. Or it was very decent tasting, but once you start looking at the ingredients and nutritional information, it was very clear that there was more than enough sugar there to still feed the cancer and potentially make me relapse. At the time of this recording, I'm cancer-free for almost 7 years, and we're doing regular checkups, and I'm doing perfectly fine. So I'm fully intending on staying the course, but I would really love to share with you what I've been through and what I've done in case this is relevant for anybody who's listening. So, going back to chocolate, when I could not find the chocolate that I could enjoy, I just thought to myself, well, why can't I take the 100% chocolate and just sweeten it with something that would be metabolically friendly, that would be a natural, unprocessed, non-glycemic sugar alternative. And this is where it started. Of course, sweetening a 100% chocolate with something else without proper equipment, trial failed miserably. But as a scientist in me was very curious, why did it fail? And so with the support of my family and their presence, we decided to take a trip to one of the countries in South America where chocolate was part of the culture from ancient Mayans and Aztec times as a medicinal plant, and learn how they used to sweeten and make the chocolate back in a time where sugar did not yet exist. And so we went to the rainforest of Costa Rica very far off the beaten path, definitely not a single tourist in the area. We went to the remote village where people were growing native original DNA cacao trees and basically fermenting and roasting and making chocolate from them right there. And so we were hosted by this little old lady. Her name was Dunya. She looked like she was 90-something years old, but at the same time, she was very energetic and just living and completely just involved. And her health span was amazing. And we rented a house on her farm, and the next day or the following day she came by and she said, "So are you ready to see how the chocolate is made?" And we were like, "Yes." And so she took us through this journey of using, the native plants that grow in Mesoamericas, but also were growing in more ancient times, such as whole plant stevia, not the stevia you buy in the store that looks like white powder, but the actual dried out stevia leaves and chicory root and agave root and this coconut, these different plants, but in the unprocessed natural way that can be added to the chocolate making process. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, now I know what I need to do and how to sweeten the chocolate. And we came back to Houston, Texas, which is where we're from, and got a few pieces of equipment to start making our own chocolate. So we started getting our cacao beans directly from the neighboring farm where we were staying. And because that cacao just tasted so good. And that's how that started. Let's go back to sugar. Why do we avoid sugar? Sugar is something that people say is very, very necessary, right? Doctors don't ever tell you to cut out sugar or, eat less of it. But at the same time, being around the COVID pandemic, we could very definitively see that people who had the chronic progressive diseases, usually driven by ultra-processed foods containing very high amounts of sugar, people who were pre-diabetic or diabetic or had any other kind of metabolic syndrome, had a worse outcome in COVID than people who didn't. And to me, other than my cancer, which was diagnosed in 2018, treated in early 2019, and then, of course, by the end of 2019, the COVID pandemic started, it was a very clear indication that something had to be done. Not necessarily on the end of creating more drugs, but about how do we not get to that situation? How can we remedy those chronic progressive diseases with food? And that was my initial call of passion to create a company that would be a food technology company focused on functional foods, and to start with the very best chocolate we could offer to the world. The chocolate that will have no chemicals, no artificial ingredients, and no sugar. The chocolate that would be safe for me as a cancer survivor to consume, but also something that I would want to share with the world for them to be able to eat and get healthier. So does that sound like a fun thing to do, to heal the ailments with chocolate? Wouldn't that be a dream? If it is, leave me a note in the comments. I would love to see your perspective on that. And so this is where we started. I am a founder of Sinless Treats Chocolate. I'm also a chief medical officer of Rethinking. It's another food technology company where we focused on dietary supplements based on medicinal level microgreens. And those two companies are sibling companies. So microgreens, of course, can provide up to 120 times of nutritional value of the regular plants. And the plants currently found in the store are usually either grown hydroponically or on a very nutrient-depleted soil. That is something that we're trying to address with that microgreens by growing it on regenerative soil and putting all of those essential micronutrients into those microgreens. And you know what we do then? We take those microgreens and we put them into the chocolate. So the chocolate comes out to be as indulging and delicious as anybody would expect. But with broccoli microgreens there, people think they're eating the chocolate, but they're really eating a salad. And the reason we put broccoli microgreens in the chocolate is because broccoli microgreens known to have compounds that is the most effective anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer molecules in nature. And so when we're setting out to create the most delicious and nutritious chocolate, we wanted to put everything there to really help myself and then everybody in this village to reach their nutritional goals while they can enjoy and let their kids enjoy too. So in the next episode, we will tell you how our chocolate and our products is different and how we were able to avoid all of the harmful synthetic dyes and artificial ingredients and emulsifiers. So if you want to know how you can make better products without using all of the artificial ingredients, come back next week and we will tell you how it's possible. For now, stay healthy and remember, health is wealth. If you want to learn more about my story and try the chocolate, you can go to sinlesstreetschocolate.com, or if you're in Houston, come by and try it for yourself.